They shot some footage, which thankfully I never saw, and I hope nobody else ever saw it. I hope it's been burned, because it was very crude video footage of me just standing there with these terrible looking things on my ears. That was the first makeup attempt.
Star Trek is a global phenomenon, but the show audiences fell in love with was hiding some massive secrets. We're not talking about plot twists. We're talking about massive, embarrassing mistakes.
Admiral, I am receiving hailstorms.
From props that seemed to have a mind of their own to bloopers so bad they caused a real-life feud between the actors, the original series is littered with details fans were never supposed to notice. Get ready, because we are counting down the most shocking slip-ups that break the magic of the Enterprise. Lucille Ball's risky bet. What set Star Trek apart from other science fiction was its optimism. It showed a future where Earth is a utopia. Things like income inequality and discrimination were ancient history. Star Trek was more than just a show, it was a worldwide phenomenon. It broke records, filled theaters, and made stars out of its cast. But as big as it was, there were things fans were never meant to see. You see, the idea for Star Trek began way back in 1964. Gene Roddenberry pitched his draft to Desilu Productions, one of the top independent television companies at the time. He met with Herbert F. Solow, Desilu's director of production. Solow believed in the idea and signed Roddenberry to a 3-year development deal. What many overlooked is who was really in charge at Desilu: Lucille Ball. At first, the comedy legend did not really understand the project, but she played a key role in pushing the show forward. Without her support, Star Trek might not have been made at all. During development, the concept changed a lot. The first pilot, titled The Cage, was filmed in 1964 and looked very different from the final series. Desilu pitched the show to CBS, but CBS said no. They already had a similar program in the works called Lost in Space, so Roddenberry had to look elsewhere. NBC showed some interest and agreed to fund that first pilot, but when they saw the result, they thought it was, to put it mildly, too cerebral. Even though they rejected the first pilot, NBC still liked the basic concept. They felt the issue was with the script, not the idea itself. This led NBC to do something rare. They paid for a second pilot. That second attempt, called Where No Man Has Gone Before, made all the difference. This time, NBC was satisfied, and the show was added to their 1966 schedule. When that first pilot failed, only one character was kept: Spock, played by Leonard Nimoy. Megal Barrett, who was in the first pilot, was also carried forward, but in a different role. The second pilot introduced the team that fans would later fall in love with. William Shatner came in as Captain Kirk. James Doohan joined as Chief Engineer Montgomery Scotty Scott. George Takei was cast as Lieutenant Sulu. The first season also brought in other key faces. Nichelle Nichols played Lieutenant Uhura, the communications officer. She made history as the first African-American woman to hold such an important role on American TV. DeForest Kelley joined as Dr. Leonard Bones McCoy, and he stayed on as one of the main stars. But even with a solid cast, the show faced serious struggles. Even before the first episode aired, Star Trek came close to being canceled. Desilu Productions was in deep financial trouble. They had gone from producing just one half-hour sitcom, The Lucy Show, to covering 2 very expensive 1-hour dramas, Mission Impossible and Star Trek. This sudden shift left the company short on money. By February 1966, Star Trek was nearly cut off completely. It was Herbert Solow who stepped in and convinced Lucille Ball to keep both shows alive. Still, even after it finally made it to television, the problems did not stop. Ratings were low. Star Trek only lasted 3 seasons and produced 79 episodes before NBC canceled it. But Star Trek's real success came later. Through syndication in the 1970s, the show was rediscovered by audiences. It became a cult classic. It was clear Star Trek was not just another show, it was a movement. It inspired a franchise of 11 television series, 13 feature films, and countless other products. Looking back, it is now seen as one of the most influential shows in history. But to create that believable world, the team had to rely on low-budget tricks. How to fake warp speed. Creating a believable world didn't stop with the sets. Costumes, props, and aliens were brought to life by talented designers. And you see, those choices became just as iconic as the ship itself. Bill Theiss was the costume designer. He created the look of the Starfleet uniforms that are still recognized all over the world. Theiss also designed costumes for female guest stars and the many aliens that appeared on the show. His work shaped the look of Klingons, Vulcans, Romulans, and many others, giving each alien race a clear identity. At the same time, artist and sculptor Hua Chang added his own magic. Chang had worked for Walt Disney Productions before joining Star Trek. He became the man behind many of the show's props. He created the famous flip-open communicator, which some believe inspired the later design of cell phones. Chang also invented the tricorder, the portable device used to scan, record, and analyze data. On top of that, he designed the medical tools for sickbay. As the series went on, he also helped create some of its most memorable alien creatures, like the Gorn and the Horta. These designs gave Star Trek a unique look. But long before the digital age, Star Trek was pushing limits with its models and special effects. The original Enterprise model used for filming was much smaller than you might think, but no less impressive. It was about 14 feet long and made out of sheet plastic and hard wood. Building it took hundreds of hours. It was mounted on a mechanical arm so the crew could control its angles for filming. The show was commended for its special effects, especially its way of showing warp speed. The thing nobody tells you is how simple the trick was. To create the star trails, the crew used black matte backgrounds covered with printed stars. They then superimposed them on each other to make the illusion of light speed. The transporter was another effect that fans loved. In reality, cinematographers sprinkled glitter into a beam of light and filmed it. They then cut the effect into the shape of the characters and slowly faded them in and out of the shot. This simple trick gave audiences the feeling of dematerializing and reappearing somewhere else. These creative solutions made Star Trek stand out, but its biggest impact came from the human stories. A legacy in the stars. Star Trek has inspired imaginations for decades, and some of its behind-the-scenes facts are just as powerful as the stories on screen. One of the most famous moments came in the 1968 episode Plato's Stepchildren. In it, Captain Kirk and Uhura shared a kiss. It was the first between a black woman and a white man on American TV. At the time, this was highly debated. Some wanted to remove it, but the scene stayed. Today, it is remembered as a milestone. You see, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a huge fan of the show. Toward the end of the second season, actress Nichelle Nichols, who played Uhura, decided she wanted to quit. She signed her resignation letter because she wanted to return to Broadway. But before it could go through, Dr. King himself spoke to her. He told her that her role was too important to give up. As a black female actress on television during the civil rights movement, she was a role model. Those words convinced Nichols to stay, and the result became history. Star Trek's influence went even further into the real world. The communicator used by Captain Kirk inspired Motorola engineer Martin Cooper to design the first mobile phone. He admitted the idea came while watching the show. NASA also honored Star Trek by naming its first space shuttle Enterprise. At first, it was supposed to be called Constitution, but thousands of fans petitioned for the change. Spock's Vulcan salute is now one of the most famous gestures in pop culture, but it actually came from Leonard Nimoy's childhood. Growing up, he saw Orthodox Jewish people performing a blessing with the fingers split in two. The hand position stayed with him. Years later, Nimoy brought it into Star Trek with the simple words, "Live long and prosper." Another unforgettable presence came from Mayle Barrett Roddenberry, often called the First Lady of Star Trek. She played several characters like Nurse Chapel, but her most lasting role was one you did not see. She was the voice of most of Starfleet's computers until she passed away in 2009. Even the sets themselves carried a legacy. To save money, many later Star Trek series reused sets from earlier shows. For example, the quarters of Data and Worf were originally Captain Kirk's quarters. The room where Spock sacrificed himself was later used for Klingons, Ferengi, and others. But for all its magic, the low budget and fast schedules led to mistakes. Errors hiding in plain sight. Even though Star Trek was groundbreaking, it was not perfect. To put it mildly, some of the funniest and strangest mistakes happened right in front of the camera, and fans were never supposed to notice. One example is with Dr. McCoy. In Season 1, Episode 6, Mudd's Women, McCoy is wearing a blue tunic when the women beam onto the ship. Suddenly, in the very next shot, his shirt changes into a medical smock. It's a clear continuity mistake. Captain Kirk also had his share of errors. In Season 3, Episode 12, he and Spock are tortured. At one point, Kirk's arms are chained up. When filmed from behind, his arms are stretched wide above his head, but from the front, his arms are closer together and bent at the elbows. The constant switching made the scene look odd. Even Sulu wasn't safe from bloopers. In the very first episode, Yeoman Rand delivers him a tray of food. In wide shots, the colored cubes are in a bowl, but in close-ups, the cubes are on a plate. When the camera shifts back, they are once again in a silver bowl. Small details like these slip through often, and sometimes the mistakes were even written into the credits. For 13 episodes in Season 1, George A. Rudder's job title was listed as Script Supervisor instead of Script Supervisor. Fixing it would have cost money, so the misspelling stayed. But the errors did not stop at credits or costumes. Even the sets gave away secrets. In Season 1, Episode 9, Dr. Van Gelder pleads with Kirk. If you look closely, you can see the actor's tape marker on the floor. These markers tell actors where to stand, but they were not meant to appear on camera. Hairstyling also caused errors. Nurse Christine Chapel had different hairstyles across the 3 seasons. In Season 3, Episode 20, The Way to Eden, an old scene was reused to save money. When Chapel faints, her hairstyle suddenly switches back to an earlier look. Mistakes even made tough situations look a little too comfortable. Kirk and Spock are thrown into a prison cell in Season 1, Episode 26. When they hit the ground, the crash mat is in plain sight. These errors made viewers laugh, but the biggest secrets were kept on film reels. Hollywood's most human errors. Spock's pointed ears were one of the most famous parts of the show. But of course, they were not real. Leonard Nimoy wore prosthetic tips that were attached to his real ears. Makeup was added to blend them in. The trick worked most of the time, but not always. In Season 2, Episode 21, the scene between Nimoy's real ear and the fake one is clearly visible. For a character as serious as Spock, it was a rare moment when the illusion broke. But fans would later see even more mistakes thanks to the cast themselves. During the 1970s, when Star Trek had been canceled, fans went to conventions to celebrate the series. The highlight was often an 8mm reel of bloopers from the original show. These reels showed William Shatner, Leonard Nimoy, and others walking into doors, messing up lines, or getting frustrated. They were goofy and showed a completely different side of the crew. Fans loved them, but not every cast member felt the same. The thing nobody tells you is that these reels caused a massive feud. They were originally made for rap parties at the end of each season, meant as private jokes for the cast and crew. Star Trek creator Gene Roddenberry later brought them to conventions to entertain fans. But not everyone approved. According to William Shatner's book, Movie Memories, Leonard Nimoy was deeply unhappy about it. He even wrote a strong letter asking Roddenberry to stop showing them. Nimoy felt they made the cast look unprofessional. This tension put a strain on their friendship for years. So are we missing a key detail? The thing is, looking back, many of the mistakes were caused by small budgets, fast shooting, and human error. Some were tiny, like McCoy's shirt changing. Others were more obvious, like the crash mat. These errors slipped past editors but were later noticed by sharp-eyed fans. But they didn't take away from the show's legacy. They added to it. Shatner once said the reels showed the cast as just people. Not perfect, but human. And that may be why they are loved so much. The mistakes have become part of its charm. They show how a series, even with errors, can still grow into one of the most influential shows of all time. Which mistake shocked you the most? Was the cast just unprofessional, or does it make the show better? Let us know below. Like and subscribe for more hidden stories.